everyone. Welcome to the 11th Sunday in Ordinary Time. And we'll begin this reflection with the Gospel. And I know I've said it over and over again, but size doesn't really matter to God, and He's got nothing to prove. Okay, so we reflect on how big the cosmos is, how big planets are, all this sort of thing. And this ever-expanding cosmos, we see that the place of Earth is very insignificant, seemingly, to everything else. So it seems a little bit crazy to think that on this tiny little piece of space dust planet, and this is where we are at, and we are just so small compared to everything else. So why would God have anything to do with us? Why would He care? And but since God spoke everything into being, really what we see as immense, as ginormous, it's not, it's not much for God. God can speak things into being, and so we really do matter to Him, even though in the way that we see things, we seem so small. And so we get this parable today about the mustard seed, and it's the smallest of the seeds. It's like, well, what is the kingdom of heaven like? It's like this mustard seed. It starts out so small and insignificant looking, but it grows into the biggest of all trees, and it gives shade and delight to all the animals that are able to perch on the tree and be under the tree. And so, first of all, this is an important lesson for us. And by the way, this reflection comes from Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. I wouldn't be able to come up with something like this. And so, when we feel that things aren't going well for us, first of all, it's an illusion of the devil, always. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be realists and say, yeah, it looks like we're in trouble, here and there's concrete action that needs to be taken. Although first we should always go to prayer. But God will give us that action that we need. But still, our smallness is an advantage. Our insignificance, our weaknesses are advantages. St. Paul always says, where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. That doesn't mean we should sin all the time, right? But it does mean if we do happen to fall into sin, if we happen to have these weaknesses and all these sort of things, God can work through that because He is attracted to humility. He is attracted to this smallness. That's why we matter so much in what we see as this gigantic, ginormous picture. Okay? And that brings us to St. Paul today. That's actually where I want to focus. Because St. Paul shows us how we need to have these absolute, complete, and total priority shifts. Okay? And I'm gonna need some help here, because he says, brothers and sisters, we are always courageous, although we know that while we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord. For we walk by faith and not by sight. Yet we are courageous, and we would rather leave the body and go home to the Lord. Therefore we aspire to please Him, whether we are at home or away. Okay, so let's first of all get something very straight right away. We are 100% pro-life. He says, well, we would rather be away and be with the Lord. Life is a gift. It's beautiful. It's so wonderful, and it is very short, and shorter for some than others. So we are 100% pro-life, but what is St. Paul talking about? The idea, the reality that he is talking about here is that while we're in our bodies and while we're here on earth, we're here to serve the Lord. Okay. This is a radically different idea that the world has, and actually a growing amount of Catholics, especially in the West, have. Our faith, the Catholic religion, it's an add-on. It's just there when we need it. It's nice. I'm Catholic, but I'm also a soccer fan, and I'm also, I like this music, and it all goes on the Facebook page or whatever the latest thing is. If you read St. Paul, that's not it at all. It's not an add-on. It's essential. It's the ultimate why to everything. Our home is with Jesus Christ. And while we're here in our bodies, and we get our bodies back in heaven, but that's a different homily altogether, while we're here, we are here to serve the Lord. And there's always going to be a tension in this life. There's always going to be some pain, there's always going to be some suffering, there's always going to be some yearning on this side of heaven, because we are meant to be with the Lord. So while we are here, we do God's will. We're meant to worship God. We're meant to pray. We're meant to serve our neighbors, and when we're not doing that, when we're getting too comfortable, as Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI famously said, you were not made for comfort, you were made for greatness. Okay, that greatness is to live life for God. Okay, when we live too much for comfort, we notice that we become more miserable, and you can see that in the world. Okay, I'm not saying all comfort is bad. You know that we're working towards some progress, and we have some medical means that we never had before. But when everything becomes about that, notice how God just goes off into the periphery. Okay, and all morality goes off to the periphery. All happiness goes off into the periphery, and it's just this constant need for more of this security and all these things that can't ultimately give security. So we get back to St. Paul. He's saying we're always courageous. He says it twice in that reading. We're always courageous because in this life, and there can be great things in this life, don't get me wrong, but we are pilgrims. And far too many people are making this our final stay. They're forgetting about God. He's an option. It's like anything else in life. And that is not the gospel. Okay? So while we're in these bodies, we are doing the Lord's will. We are growing in love for God and neighbor. But that is essential. That is the center, that is the core, and that is the why. Not just some add-on. So as we approach the table of the Lord today, and we receive Jesus, either in the Eucharist or from a blessing, let us ask Jesus, change my mind and my heart to live completely for God. Because that is the point. The point, while we're here on earth, is to serve Him, to praise Him, to reverence Him, and thus to save our souls, so that we can finally be at home with Him, where one day we will see Him in heaven face to face.